Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive with us.
Always happy to be back.
Today we're going to be talking about something that I think is like on every educator's mind,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is how to become a more adaptive educator.
Mm.
Someone who could just like roll with the punches and, just on the fly
Right.
and just design instruction that really connects no matter what like challenges come up.
Absolutely. I mean, that's really what it's all about, right?
Exactly. And so, lucky for us, we have a research article called Going Beyond the Comparison Toward Experimental Instructional Design Research with Impact.
Catchy title.
I know, right? It's a mouthful, but it is like jam-packed with insights to help us get to that like adaptive educator nirvana.
Yeah, it really lays out a clear path, I think, for going beyond just comparing different teaching methods
Right.
and actually getting down to like the nitty-gritty, like why do certain strategies work?
I love that. Okay, so the article kicks off with this idea of two types of knowledge that educators need.
Okay.
What knowledge and why knowledge. So break that down for me. What is what knowledge and why knowledge?
So what knowledge is like your bread and butter? Your teaching methods that you know inside and out, the
Yeah.
how-to knowledge,
Yeah.
things like project-based learning, flipped classrooms, integrating technology, all the
Yeah.
tools in your toolbox as a teacher.
Gotcha. So that makes sense. That's like the what you're doing in the classroom.
Right.
So then where does the why knowledge come in?
Well, because just knowing the what isn't always enough.
Right.
Why knowledge is about understanding like the mechanisms underneath
Okay.
that make those strategies effective. So it's the why behind the what.
The why behind the what. Okay, so it's not enough to just know how to do like a flipped classroom.
Right.
We need to know like why it works for certain learners in certain situations.
Yeah, and that's where that adaptability comes in. When
Yeah.
you understand the why, you can start to adjust your approach. You can make decisions about what to do in your classroom.
Oh, that's good.
You can even create new strategies that fit different needs.
Yes, I'm seeing the light here. This why knowledge is like a superpower.
It really is.
It's like you can unlock all these possibilities.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is that the article argues that just comparing teaching methods,
Right.
like seeing which one leads to better test scores,
Right.
that's not enough to uncover the why.
Really? See, that's kind of what surprises me because I feel like, isn't that how we traditionally measure like effectiveness?
Yeah?
We see, okay, well, did this group get better results on a test?
Yeah, it is, but it only tells part of the story. It's
Well-
like, imagine you're trying to bake a cake. You could try two different recipes and see which one rises higher,
Mm-hmm.
but just knowing that one cake is taller
Doesn't tell you why.
doesn't tell you why, right? Was it the type of flour? Was it the oven temperature? Was
That's
it
right.
something else entirely?
There are so many factors in a cake.
Exactly.
And it's the same in teaching.
Yeah.
So I'm starting to understand why just comparing results leaves us with so many like unanswered questions.
Right.
So
Yeah.
we need something more.
Yeah, we need tools that help us dig deeper and uncover those hidden mechanisms.
Okay.
And the article introduces us to two powerful techniques:
Okay, hit me.
mediation analysis and moderation analysis.
Mediation analysis, moderation analysis.
Okay.
Those sound pretty technical.
They can be a little bit.
But I'm ready to learn.
Right?
Let's start with mediation analysis. What is that all about?
Okay, so mediation analysis helps us to understand the how behind the what.
Okay.
It's like finding the missing link in a chain.
Okay.
So let's say, for example, a new teaching strategy leads to increased student engagement. But is it the strategy itself that boosts engagement?
Right.
Or does it work because it first increases students' confidence,
Okay.
which then leads to more engagement?
Okay. So there's like a step in between.
Right. Mediation analysis helps us untangle that web of cause and effect.
Okay. So it's about figuring out the specific steps or factors that lead to a particular outcome.
Exactly. And the article gives a really interesting example of this in action. Some researchers were looking at a method called integrated instruction
Integrated instruction.
for teaching medical students how to perform a lumbar puncture.
Okay. Now, for those of us who aren't in the medical field like myself, what exactly is a lumbar puncture?
So it's a procedure where a needle is inserted into the lower back
Okay.
to collect spinal fluid.
I see. Okay.
It can be pretty complex.
I bet.
A lot of specific steps involved.
I can imagine. Okay. So how did this integrated instruction come into play?
So it involved combining like step-by-step instructions with conceptual explanations.
Okay.
So instead of just telling students, do this, then that,
Right.
it explained the why behind each step.
Okay. So it's about connecting the how to the why.
Exactly.
Which makes sense when we're trying to foster like deeper understanding.
Right.
So what did the researchers find?
So they found that students who received integrated instruction performed better on a test that required them to apply the skill to a new situation.
Okay.
In other words, they were able to transfer their learning more effectively.
That's impressive.
Okay, but wait, this is where the mediation analysis comes in, right?
This is where it gets good.
Okay,
So the researchers didn't just want to know that integrated instruction worked.
right. They wanted to know why.
They wanted to understand why.
They dug deeper.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what they discovered through mediation analysis was that the integrated instruction was effective because it first boosted the students' conceptual knowledge about the procedure.
Ah,
That deeper understanding then enabled them to apply their skills more effectively.
that is so cool.
Yeah,
So they understood like the underlying concepts, and so then they could actually do it better.
exactly.
That's amazing. This is so cool. This is
Yeah.
really highlighting how important that why knowledge is.
It really does.
And it gives educators like a powerful insight.
Yeah.
If you want to use integrated instruction effectively, you got to focus on building that strong conceptual understanding first.
Right.
Wow, this is making me think about all sorts of possibilities in my own work.
Right.
I can see how understanding these underlying mechanisms could really shift my approach. And are you ready for moderation analysis?
Oh, yes. Hit me with it. I'm ready to unlock more secrets of effective teaching.
All right, moderation analysis is coming right up.
Okay. Moderation analysis. I'm ready.
All right, so moderation analysis is all about understanding the ifs and buts.
Okay. The ifs and buts.
Right, so a strategy might work wonders in one context, but then completely fall flat in another.
Right. Or it might be super effective for some learners and not so much for others.
Exactly, and those buts often depend on things like individual student characteristics.
Okay.
You know, their background, their learning preferences, maybe even the specific learning environment that they're in.
Okay. So instead of assuming like a one-size-fits-all approach,
Right,
we can use those insights to be more strategic.
exactly.
We can tailor our teaching based on the specific context.
That's the idea. And to illustrate this, the article dives into some of their own research on something called life goal framing.
Life goal framing.
Right.
All right, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
All right, so it involves prompting students to connect what they're learning to their bigger goals and aspirations,
Okay.
particularly those related to their future profession.
So if I'm teaching future teachers about classroom management techniques,
Mm-hmm.
I might ask them to reflect on how mastering these skills will help them create the kind of like positive and supportive learning environment
Yeah,
that they envision for their own students.
exactly. You're helping them see the relevance
Right.
and connect the learning to their personal values and aspirations.
Okay, so the researchers had a hunch that the effectiveness of this life goal framing would depend on students' level of confidence.
Okay.
So a student who's already confident might find that extra layer of meaning very motivating.
Yeah.
It reinforces their sense of purpose.
Right. They're like, yes, this is why I'm doing this. This is going to help me get there.
Exactly. But a student who is maybe struggling and feeling less confident, that same approach might actually feel overwhelming or even discouraging.
Right. It's like, oh, gosh, this amazing goal. I might never actually reach it.
Right. It's like, here's this thing that you might never be able to achieve.
Exactly.
So this life goal framing is kind of a double-edged sword.
It can be.
If you use it wisely, it can be really powerful.
Yeah.
But if you use it carelessly, it can backfire.
Right. And the moderation analysis confirmed this.
Okay.
So the results showed that life goal framing was most effective for students who were already confident in their abilities.
Okay.
For those who weren't, it actually had a demotivating effect.
Wow. So you really have to know your students.
You really do. And moderation analysis helps us pinpoint those ifs and buts
Okay.
so that we can make more informed decisions as educators.
I love that.
Right? We have to move away from the mindset of this always works
Right.
and embrace the nuances.
Yes. Embrace the messiness.
Embrace the messiness.
Okay. So let me get this straight. If we're thinking about using something like life goal framing, we need to be mindful of our students' confidence levels
Right.
and adjust accordingly.
Exactly. And that might mean offering additional support.
Okay.
Maybe some scaffolding for students who are less confident,
Right.
or finding alternative ways to make the learning relevant and meaningful for them.
But how do you do that? Like, how do we as educators listening right now, how can we apply these ideas to our own work?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Whether it's designing a lesson plan or even like a whole training program.
It starts with awareness, I think.
Okay.
We need to be more attuned to those individual differences and contextual factors,
Okay.
those potential moderators that can influence the effectiveness of our strategies.
So before we even choose a method,
Right.
we should be thinking about our students' confidence levels, their prior knowledge,
Yeah.
their learning styles, even the overall learning environment.
Exactly.
So it's almost like putting on a detective hat
Mm-hmm.
and really observing our students, looking for those clues
Yeah.
about what might make a particular strategy work or not work for them.
Exactly. And asking ourselves questions like, what factors might be influencing the effectiveness of this approach for this particular student?
Oh, I love that this is so powerful.
Right.
We're moving from a world of assumptions to a world of data-informed, personalized learning.
Yes, and it's a journey
Okay.
that involves constant observation, reflection, and a willingness to adapt.
Right.
Even if you aren't conducting like formal research studies,
Right.
you can still embrace this kind of thinking in your own practice.
But we can all be researchers in our own classrooms
Exactly.
or workplaces,
Yeah.
always looking for those aha moments that reveal why something is working or not working.
Exactly. It's all about cultivating that curiosity and a deeper understanding of the learning process.
I love that this has been so eye-opening, and I'm already feeling so inspired to apply these ideas.
Awesome.
But I do have to admit, this level of research sounds pretty complex.
Yeah, it can be.
The article touches on some of the challenges that researchers face in conducting these types of analyses.
Right.
Like, what are some of the things that they need to be mindful of?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest ones is the issue of confounding.
Confounding? Okay, that sounds a little bit intimidating.
It can be a little bit tricky.
Right.
So confounding happens when other factors get mixed up with the variables we're trying to study,
Okay.
making it difficult to isolate the true cause and effect.
Right, right.
It's like trying to solve a puzzle where some of the pieces are missing or don't quite fit.
Oh, I like that analogy. Okay, so it's about making sure we're not attributing an outcome
Yeah.
to one factor when it might actually be caused by something else entirely.
Precisely. Let me give you an example.
Oh.
Remember that study on integrated instruction for lumbar punctures?
The one where it boosted conceptual knowledge.
Yeah, that one.
Yes.
Well, imagine if the researchers hadn't taken into account the students' prior knowledge of anatomy and physiology.
Oh, okay.
It's possible that students who already had a strong foundation in those subjects would naturally perform better on both the conceptual knowledge test and the transfer test, regardless of the type of instruction that they received.
Oh, so their existing knowledge would be like a confounding factor,
Exactly.
making it seem like the integrated instruction was more effective than it actually was.
Exactly. That's why researchers need to be extremely careful to identify and control for these potential confounders.
Right,
It's not always easy,
right.
but it's crucial for drawing accurate conclusions about the why behind a particular outcome.
I can see how that adds another layer of complexity
It does.
to this kind of research.
Yeah.
But it also underscores the importance of being rigorous and thoughtful in our approach.
Absolutely. And it highlights the importance of grounding our research in solid learning theories.
Okay.
You know, those theories can provide a framework for identifying the most relevant variables to consider
Right.
and help us make sense of our findings.
So it's this beautiful interplay between theory and practice.
Yes.
We use theories to guide our research,
Mm.
and then we use the findings from that research to refine and inform our practice.
Exactly. And the more we understand about how learning works,
Mm-hmm.
the better equipped we'll be to create truly transformative educational experiences.
I love that this has been such an eye-opening conversation.
It's been fun.
It feels like we've just scratched the surface, but I'm already feeling energized and excited to apply these ideas to my own work.
I'm so glad.
But before we wrap up, what's one key takeaway that you hope listeners will walk away with today?
It's got to be the power of why knowledge, right? Like, it's not enough to just know what works. We need to understand why.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's like that old saying, give a man a fish, feed him for a day, teach a man to fish, and you feed him for a lifetime.
Right.
But like, we're going even further than that.
Okay.
We're not just teaching people to fish. We're teaching them to understand like the whole ecosystem.
I love that analogy.
Right.
So when we understand the why, we become more than just instructors, right? We become like architects of learning.
Yeah.
We can create these environments and experiences that are truly tailored to our students' needs and goals. And that's where the magic happens, right? It's empowering educators to be able to make those decisions
Yeah.
and adapt their strategies to fit the unique needs of their learners.
So I have a challenge for everyone listening out there.
Oh.
Think about your own teaching practice.
Right. Yeah.
What are some potential mediators or moderators that you could investigate? What factors might be influencing the effectiveness of your strategies?
Ooh, good questions. Good question. So maybe you've noticed that a particular type of feedback is like incredibly effective for some students, but then it seems to demotivate others.
Yeah.
Could it be that their level of self-esteem is like a moderate in factor? Or
Yeah.
maybe you've introduced a new collaborative learning activity and you're seeing like a boost in engagement. But is that boost because the activity is just inherently engaging, or is it because it's fostering like a sense of belonging and connection,
Okay.
which is then leading to higher engagement?
Those are fantastic questions. And they really highlight how this kind of thinking can be applied in like any educational setting, right? From a traditional classroom to like a corporate training program.
Absolutely.
Like we can all benefit from this deeper understanding of the learning process.
The principles are universal. It's about going beyond just those surface level observations and digging into that rich complexity of human learning
Mm-hmm.
and recognizing that there's no one size fits all solution.
Right.
What works brilliantly in one context might totally flop in another, and that's okay.
It's about embracing that complexity
Yes.
and using it to our advantage, right?
Totally.
It's about being curious, observant, and willing to experiment.
Exactly, and never being afraid to ask why.
Oh, I like that.
Why is this working? Why isn't this working? Those questions are the key, I think, to unlocking the secrets of effective teaching.
Well, dear listeners, it seems we've reached the end of another deep dive.
Oh.
And as always, we've only just scratched the surface.
Yeah, there's always more to explore, so I highly recommend checking out the full article, Going Beyond the Comparison Toward Experimental Instructional Design Research with Impact.
Yes, it's a mouthful, but it's worth it.
It's packed with even more insights and practical guidance, I think.
So to wrap things up, remember the journey to becoming a more adaptive educator is ongoing. So stay curious, keep experimenting, and never stop asking why.
Happy teaching, everyone.
And happy learning.